Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Wedding Biz. This is Andy Kushner, your host. If you missed last week, it was about Kelly McCleskey-Delata of A Savvy Event and Nancy Luchin of Nancy Luchin Design. And we had a big focus on their partnership with this just wonderful, wonderful conference called Oh So Inspired. If you already know about it, you should really the interview because you get all the background on how they came up with the idea. And if you are not aware of it, really need to check it out. It's a wonderful conference, Oh So Inspired. So something else I want to also mention is that I took a little look recently at where people are listening to the show from. And they are all over the world with particularly a lot of people in Canada, Australia, France, the UK, China, and so many other countries. And I'm just so grateful that you all are listening to us from all over the place. And really appreciate it. And love if you could share with your friends and keep spreading the word. So this morning, our episode is with Paula LeDuc of Paula LeDuc Fine Catering and Events. Paula started her catering company in 1980 and evolved into a full design service company with a team of 75 total full-time team members comprising of chefs, bartenders, service staff, designers, account executives, event managers, executive leaders, and tons of warehouse people. Let's not forget them too. And they can literally be contracting over 500 people every weekend. The weekend coming up after I did this interview, she had over 500 people for the weekend. Just really incredible. Paula is an icon operating out of San Francisco. Clients include celebrities, dignitaries, politicians, media moguls such as Oprah, as well as technology companies like Apple, Salesforce, Airbnb, and Pandora. They've done the Screen Actors Guild Awards in Los Angeles. They do travel everywhere. They've done company parties for film premieres, including Ratatouille and the Star Wars trilogy, and of course, tons of luxury weddings. She even tells a story that you're about to hear about the wedding of the social media baron Sean Parker and singer-songwriter Alexandra Lyons in Big Sur, working with Ken Falk, a designer who basically together produced the venue and took 6 months building the site and collaborating, and it was covered in Vanity Fair. You're going to hear a great story about that event. Also, Paula is growing their venue management service, selling and producing all the events at several venues. I want to remind you to listen to The Next Level, our follow-on segment in which my co-hosts and I will tease out some of the highlights and bring them out to deliver specific tactics and tips to help you raise your business to the next level. I have something really special to talk about. It's our sponsor for today, and believe me, we check them out thoroughly. We don't just take anyone. So I want to say that if you need more presence in the market and you're wondering how to accomplish that, you need to check out OFD Consulting. They are an award-winning publicity agency that focuses on the wedding industry. Their client portfolio ranges from top-tier planners and venues to well-regarded national brand and industry thought leaders. OFD Consulting has placed clients in a slew of popular online and offline publications, and they also have a service dedicated entirely to B2B press. So for those looking to elevate your brand reputation among peers through online mentions, guest articles, podcasts, and speaking engagements, you've got to contact them. And one more piece of information, I want to tell you that if you are a small business, and most of us are, and you want to dip your toes in the PR waters, check out the OFD Collective, which is a 3-tier membership with robust educational and coaching opportunities along with ongoing press leads. So check out ofdconsulting.com. So now enjoy my incredible conversation with the wonderful Paula LeDuc. I am so excited to be meeting you here in San Francisco or Emeryville. I appreciate you taking the time to get together.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
It's an honor for sure.
Well, and you've set me up with some nice refreshments and stuff, so I appreciate it. So I understand, looking up a little bit about you, that you have an Italian heritage and grew up surrounded by family who love to cook and entertain. I'm so envious.
Yes.
What was that like for you? You remember this as a little girl, basically?
Oh, sure. Mother was always in the kitchen, and Dad was always inviting people in. The house was filled with family and friends for my entire life. So it was just part of the ritual of the 5:30 dinner. Dad walked in at 5. Dinner was at 5:30. Dad would find out before he left for work, what are you cooking for dinner?
Oh,
And we would come home from school and say, what's on the table for dinner? So extraordinary cook, very much a home cook, very definitely an Italian cook.
were you involved at all in cooking with her? And
You know what? I wasn't involved in anything that had to do with cooking. In
What?
fact, when I got married, I didn't have a cookbook, and I hadn't a clue how to cook. I graduated from college, I got married, and I hadn't cooked a thing. I didn't have a cookbook. I really did. In fact, the first 3 months of our marriage, Jim barbecued every day.
wow, this is so interesting.
And then the season came.
Uh-huh.
He couldn't barbecue. I figured out, I guess I'm going to have to cook. It was in my blood, but it wasn't anything I was particularly passionate about. And we had some very good friends from college that we hung out with, and they were very good cooks. And so I became totally enamored with this concept of not just dinner on the table, but what was then gourmet cooking. And went through one gourmet cookbook after the other, and I was completely smitten.
You just got hooked and passionate.
I was totally hooked.
But I'm curious, going back for a minute, then what did you do in college? What did you study?
I have a degree in sociology, and then I have a master's degree in special education, which is ultimately what I did when I graduated from college.
I saw something about you teaching cooking to the blind. Was that
Yes.
some other time period that you did that?
When I graduated from, got my master's, I was an itinerant teacher for the blind in the San Mateo School District. So I had the elementary age students who were in public school but needed services. They needed to learn Braille. They needed augmented services to stay in the public school around their visual disability. And so that's what I did. And then the professor whom I studied under at San Francisco State and got my master's determined that we had the academics for our blind population, but we didn't have anything beyond the educational programs, high school or college. And so he wrote a grant, got it funded, and brought 5 of his favorite instructors together, and we wrote the curriculum for a program that taught independent daily living skills to this adult population who had academics.
Because I read something that you literally taught cooking to blind students. Is that true?
I did. So I was the living skills instructor. So I taught into cooking, cleaning, what we did is we decided if we were going to do this right, we had to locate them in the sighted community. So we took 10 units in a 75 unit building and scattered them throughout the building. So they had to learn they'd all been in schools for the blind, residential schools. So they'd never really lived by themselves, and they had to have these skills to live. So everything from travel, from the mobility instructor, but I was the cooking instructor, and I taught them everything about, they knew how to make a bed, but how to turn on a stove, how to go grocery shopping, how to put things properly away and store them, labeled everything. And the head of the culinary arts department, Ken Wolf, who became my mentor at the junior college that was located across the street, called me one day and said, "Paul, I understand you're teaching cooking for the blind, and I'd love to adapt cooking techniques to the blind for a project I'm working on." And I thought, well, this will be interesting because my students were learning how to open a milk carton and stand it up in the refrigerator versus put it on its side and spill. I mean, it was pretty basic. We were really, really very basic. We were just doing very, very basic how to survive and eat.
But he wanted to take this to a whole nother level, right?
So he brought my students over, and of course I with this man, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what an incredible resource. So he was teaching the science of cooking, his explanation, and I thought, I can follow a recipe. And I was naturally generally a good cook just because of my upbringing. I knew I was a great eater, so I certainly was learning to be a good cook to satisfy my own palate, not only my husband's at the time. But anyway, so I was pregnant with my first baby, and I started studying with Ken. I started studying with him. He had a series of classes. He just adopted me, and we did an independent study kind of thing, and I worked at the college at the culinary arts program there. And I worked there, and he also taught classes in the evening in his home. And so I plugged into all of those classes. Every single Wednesday I was at his house taking classes. And I did that for, 4 or 5 years while I was home raising babies.
That long. And just to get a sense of timing, were you in your mid-20s basically?
I was pregnant with Diana at 27, and I started studying with him at the college after I had Diana.
So you're into your early 30s by the time you're done with this training.
And I was just dabbling, and a friend asked me to cater a party. And I said, no way, not on your life am I going to cater. It's not what I'm going to do for a living. No, thank you. And I had children, so I wasn't particularly interested in doing it for a living, but she kept asking. And my husband was in earshot, and he said, why are you saying no to this? This looks really good on you. I think you should do this. And so I thought, well, I didn't have equipment. Had my family home. I had nothing other than what I had in my private residence. And I catered my first party.
Well, but let me clarify, because if I know correctly, it wasn't just any party. Is this the fundraiser where you had to prepare 350 boxed lunches? Is this the one we're talking about?
No.
No? Okay, it's another one?
Not quite yet.
So how did this first one go for you?
It was fantastic. My feet have never hurt more in my entire life. Everything in my house I took out of the house and put in I think we had an Audi at the time, put everything in the car and schlepped it over and cooked for, I don't know, it took me a week to prepare. It was silly. It was 100 people, but I had to hire staff.
Oh my gosh, out of your own home kitchen, 100 people?
Yes. Oh, the home kitchen, you can't imagine the thousands and thousands of meals that little home kitchen did before we actually moved out. But nonetheless, there was the very beginning. And people who were there called and said, would you cater a party for me? And then word of mouth, we were in Piedmont, and the word of mouth spread, and one thing led to the other, and the phone rang, and I was nursing babies and taking care of children during the day and getting my baby down to bed and then staying up half the night and cooking for the next thing.
And still out of your home?
All out of our house.
You didn't yet have commercial equipment and
No. Well, I started in 80, and we put our first we built a commercial kitchen in 87. And in 90, we bought the building, and that's the building that we have here now in Emeryville. So we bought the building, but before then, we just rented space and put a commercial kitchen in, expanded space for offices in that building, and outgrew that space very quickly, and then bought this building.
Wow. So this thing really exploded, in a sense, unexpectedly for you. Is that?
Definitely.
Wow.
There was never a plan. Jim used to say to me, my husband, and he would always say, what's the 3-year plan? Because he was kind of interested in saying, where's this going to go? And what are you going to do with this? Just out of more than anything, curiosity. And I said, don't even ask me that question. I can tell you the today plan. Maybe I can tell you tomorrow. But don't ask me 3 years. Don't even ask me a year. I have no idea where this is going. And I didn't need to know. It was just very grassroots, grown, humbly out of our house, and moved out of the little bungalow where I started, bought a bigger house with a separate entrance down below, put a kitchen in the lower level of our home, and did that until 1990. So for 10 years, it was out of our house.
Well, but I'm also wondering from not only scaling it, but from a business perspective. I mean, if you're not really thinking ahead like that, you don't have a business plan, you're not necessarily, is this organic for you in terms of how you built a business and you started to hire people?
Yes. Was completely organic. I guess there was the nature of the development of the business was I never really thought anything other than what an extraordinary gift this is and how joyful it is and how incredible from my heritage, this would be, of course, important, how incredible it is to make people happy. You're in the total happy business. Now, I say that today, quote unquote happy business, but truly is all I could think of was how to tailor something when I walked in the door to meet a client, and what was I able to create with and for them, and what additives could we, what if we did this? How about this? Very, very creative, very passionate. Never thought about it a day. Literally, the phone rang, I was on to my next party, and it was just everyone was completely different, and it was just joyful. I hired people who loved what they were doing and these partnerships that we developed with people, but most of all, really from the very first day. I say this now all the time, but from the roots of this, we're in the relationship business first, and we cater on the side and do events on the side, but it's all about the relationship.
See, it's interesting, and I understand the relationship, but also you're talking about making people happy. And, timing wise, we were talking before we started getting on the microphones about listening to Preston Bailey's, recent interview where he talks about being of service.
And it's so creative, and it's such an extraordinary outlet to be able to capture in yourself if you're put together this way. I mean, I've been creating since I was very little.
But in what sense were you creating?
I was building things. I was with my dad, who's an engineer, watching how he put things together, how he built a house for us. I mean, I was sort of in his skin for everything he ever did. And so the nature of, I worked for a caterer twice, and I thought to myself, oh, this isn't the way I want to do this. This is not going to work. They weren't doing anything wrong. But what I was seeing was, this is how someone does this. And from a functional perspective, it was great. But I didn't want to see what anybody else was doing because I didn't want to even think about copying or emulating them. What I wanted to do, and I knew this just instinctively, what I was creating was something that was ours, that was mine, and that wasn't what anyone else was doing in the industry. And there weren't many of us. There were only 2 or 3 caterers at the time that I started in 80. So the sky was the limit. I could create and we could make anything together.
Isn't it interesting, the drive to innovate?
Yes, no question.
Because we were talking earlier about that too. It's all I can think, all I want, and it's not to be known, right, as innovating.
No.
It's just simply to grow and change and be excited by what we're doing ourselves.
Totally. And it's not about me. It's just not about me. But what it is about making your dreams come true. Literally, it sounds trite, but literally to create something that gives the clients all of the kudos for what an extraordinary event they just hosted. I'm in the back. I'm not out front. I don't need to be seen. It's not about me or my team other than fulfilling the promise,
Can you give me some examples or maybe explain your process to me? And
Sure.
whether it's corporate, fundraiser, or a wedding.
Yes.
I think wedding and they're all important, but wedding is the most personal. Maybe you could use a story about that.
I mean, I think, I can tell you about our process
Sure.
now as a company because, we have 10 account executives and all of them today are planning with the event managers. But the process has always been the same. So first phone call, first introduction, however that happens. It's a lot about asking questions. It's more about listening and asking them the questions that will get to the heart of what someone wants us to do for them.
Can you give just a couple examples? I know there's many and it might vary from person to person, but generally what kind of questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so it's a wedding. So obviously the obvious questions, what's the time of year? What's the time of day? What's the location? You're looking for a location. So based on what you want to do, let us help you find a location, for instance. So it's a lot about where do you like to eat? If we're talking menu, so we're catering, let's just say it's just catering for the moment. Because we do a lot more than catering today. We do full event services and design and all of it. But for the first conversation is always getting at the heart of what it is you want, what time of day, what type of meal service do you want? What's the entire event look like to you? How do you want to feel when you walk in?
I love that question.
How do you want to feel when you leave? How do you want your guests to feel? It's all about emotion. We're creating, it's drama.
Yeah.
It's theater. The whole of it is theater. But it's not about creating an idea that lives outside of a client. It comes from the inside. It comes from the collaboration. And together we create something magical. And they're always custom. They're never cookie cutter. We don't follow trends. We don't follow them. We don't want to do what somebody else is doing even a little better. We want to do something new that someone else can emulate.
Yeah.
But more than anything, it really is about, and then getting deeper. We then will put a proposal together and it'll be reflective of, or it won't be, whether we hit it or we don't hit it. Sometimes until people see something in front of them to actually look at literally in a proposal, do they know what they want? Sometimes it helps them identify what they're after. Oh, I wasn't thinking this. I was thinking, oh, good. Great. And you don't have to like anything, but it's food for thought for us. So look at it and tell us if we're close or very far away, and we'll keep going until we create something that says this is it.
And I also want to point out, because earlier now you're talking about that it is a collaboration. You're doing this together, which so you're creating also an experience just through the process with the client. And I believe that, the wedding is the ultimate, that's what it's about. But on the other hand, along the way, they're really having quite an experience.
And the learning curve is high on both sides, because as you go down the road with people, they say, we want to do this. And you say, I love that idea. Let me tell you how that's going to look and feel to your guests when you do that. And they'll say, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. Well, then, but I like the idea. Let's do this instead. So then you're building their experience with and for them. And that's the entire story, literally start to finish. So there's a proposal, and they now want to see the linens and the china and the silver and the glassware, and they want to taste the beverages, and they want to taste the food. So then we have a tasting.
Well, and I want to point out for a moment too that for those who might not know, you're not only providing exquisite food, beverage, service, design, production, you're doing it all. Plus, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but you also have, I believe it's 5 exclusive venues. So it's all of it.
Exactly. And those exclusive venues for us, but it's not there. Obviously, we're everywhere. But it really is start to finish. And the best part is when we get a bride and family to the table for a tasting to taste what they have selected on the menu. Now it's a work in progress. Now we say, this is a working tasting. You don't tell us, yes, I like anything that you don't like. We're going to now continue to create for you. Chefs are all here to talk to you. And we want it to be your experience of your wedding, because you're likely not going to eat so much that day.
That's right.
So it leaves them with, I've had my food for the wedding. We feel very satisfied. Or sometimes they'll come back and taste one other thing idea we had or came up with. But mostly they leave knowing what this experience is going to be like for their guests from the dining.
I would love, Paula, to hear as much detail as you're comfortable giving. There was a wedding you did that I know was quite lavish, right? It was the wedding of, let's call him a social media baron, Sean Parker, and singer-songwriter Alexandra Leans, if I'm saying that correctly, in Big Sur. I would love to hear that, as much as you can take me through.
Oh, my goodness, it was so enormous. What happened is Ken Falk, who was the designer, very, very good client of ours, invited us in. He was producing the venue. He actually took this campground at Big Sur at Ventana.
Oh, it was Ventana was there?
Yeah.
I love that place. Okay.
And so for 6 months, he built this site. Literally.
6 months?
Rock bridges,
rock
walls over water. Unbelievable what happened. So the article, that's the Vanity Fair article, is multiple pages of that wedding that anybody can go and see what actually happened. So as we began planning the menu with Sean's people, with Ken and Sean's people, I will say, and Alexandra's, we knew what they wanted. And so we started creating the menu. And the menu turned into theatrics beyond theatrics. He wanted groaning board platters laden with, I think we did quail, and we did a variety of meats and vegetables. I mean, it was very elaborate. We had the platters all made, and the waiters would wander with them through the tables and serve the guests to their table. So that was easy enough. And serving menu, that's Russian style, it's easy enough to do, fine. A little difficult to get a platter that is, 20 inches in between two people. Okay. So we were strategic about the service about that. But nonetheless, he wanted animals on the spit. And we thought, while guests arrived, and smoke, and, it was all Lord of the Rings,
So they're not just getting the plate served to them, they're smelling it as it's cooking and it's seeing it.
Oh, totally. We had a cauldron of their soup over an open fire that we were stirring. We built all those props.
And I imagine the path, everything that Ken was building was to walk past this in a certain way, and the environment that he's creating.
The theater of it all. But we had the spit handmade. by a forger, an iron forger. And
Oh, come on.
and it had a handle on it over an open fire, and the lamb were on the spit roasting. It was incredible. So what happened with this is the catering was one aspect of this. It was in a field. We do that all the time. As long as you bring your equipment in, you can cater anywhere. So that wasn't the issue as much as the support that was needed to produce this entire event kept growing. So every costume was designed by the Lord of the Rings costume designer.
For the waiters and waitresses, for the staff?
No, at guests. Every guest sent their measurements. I can say all this. Sent their measurements in, and the designer, the Lord of the Rings costume designer, designed a unique costume for every individual at this party.
Incredible.
And then they needed to be fitted, and somebody then needed to transport all these. So we got the costumes, rented a ballroom, had all the sewing machines lined up from the seamstresses, came up from LA, and every guest came through and was fitted and got fitted with literally the sewing machine was there, and they were literally, these ladies were fitting all these women with costumes. And then we transported them to the event and had fitting rooms for all of the guests. I mean, it was a massive amount of equipment.
How many guests do you remember?
I think it was 350.
Wow. I'm just trying to picture 350 people.
So all these extra services were needed, and Ken would say, could you help fit with the costumes? Of course. Could you help us? Can you do crew meals?
Oh, your own staff is helping with some of these aspects.
I mean, literally what happened to our office is we didn't do anything in the office, and there are, 75 of us, full-time people. But everyone in the corporate office, everyone was working on this wedding. We didn't sell anything because we were so busy.
Yeah.
And so we got to the end of this 6-month thing that we just produced, and we didn't have so much business.
Oh, come on.
I mean, literally, we almost closed our doors for that wedding for 6 months, literally.
Wow, Paul. But did you know ahead of time that it would go to that extent?
Well, it just kept building, and then we'd pull in another account executive to help with this or to help with that activity, invitations. I mean, everything needed support. And Ken was designing it, and they were doing everything possible to landscape and do this vignette, which was extraordinary landscape. And so services, other things that were needed, he would call and say, can you help? Can you help? And we were like, of course, of course, of course. And so our book of business just kept growing and growing and growing, which was all lovely. It was all part of one family. It's all one event. We were so happy to collaborate, with them. But we were on crew. We fed the crew for, I think, a month, probably 30 to 45 days every single day, because they were working around the clock on this.
I'll bet you fed them pretty well, too.
It was just a great experience. So that one, and it was as elaborate production capability as we've ever handled. And we've gotten very, very good at it. So we can produce most anything today. And that's a nice capability to have when you're an event planner, to really understand production.
And again, production and the aspect of theater that we're talking about. You've also done film premiere parties, right, for companies. And how about the differences between a wedding and a gala fundraiser, a premiere party, a corporate? I mean, what are the differences? How does that?
There are differences for sure. I mean, I think most anything that is personalized to an individual, be it a wedding, an anniversary, a birthday, a life celebration of any kind, there's a level of intimacy that happens which is extraordinary. The more we know about you, the better we can tailor what we do to you and to what it is we're trying to do for you or endeavoring to do for you. When it's corporate, specifically corporate, it's a little more turnkey. There's a little less, it's not that it's less drama, though it certainly is most of the time less drama. It's more we're working with the planners in the corporations, and their time is limited. They really want us to do everything for them. And it's not anywhere near as, we certainly don't have the psychology that we have when we're planning something personally for you, especially with brides. I mean, we're a little bit on the therapist side, and we like it, and we're pretty good at it, and we enjoy that part of our business.
And how does that go? Can you tell me a little something about that?
Well, I mean, I just think you're involved with planning a bride.
Well, the vulnerability, the emotional roller coaster, all of that.
Totally. And you have the mom and the mom of the bride, and if they're not seeing eye to eye, you get the phone call from the mom who wants to do something to the bride, or the bride says, "Can you help me work with my mom?" And I'm like, "Oh my," we say, "We get it." It would be, and then you're involved in this helping people work together a little bit better,
A good way to say that. Yeah, but it's true. It is.
Really, that's what that is. But corporate is a little more, we need a menu. Here's where we're going to be. Or help us find a venue. Do you have a designer? Yes. Can you do? And then we do a proposal. And very infrequently do we do a tasting.
But it's so interesting. I get that, but it's interesting. It's almost like a missed opportunity. I mentioned to you I used to work for a Fortune 500 company, and I was in sales. I would go to these, I'm sure you've done these multi-day incentive programs.
Definitely.
Opening general sessions and things like that. There'd be a gala the last night. And I remember the same thing. I mean, food would be very good. Presentation would be nice. But the way we're talking about it, there could have been more element of theater and drama even in the food.
And when you have a chance to do that, and you have a client that has, first of all, the budget to do something more theatrical, the way you present the food and how we treat the environment, a buffet, just a buffet in and of itself, or the theatrical nature of service. I mean, we train all of our people here. We have a training and development center. You're sitting in it right now. We train every employee who works here to our style and to the way we want service done, not the way that it's done necessarily.
How would you describe that if you had to, summarize what your style is for service?
We have a variety of styles of service. And when we have a new employee, everyone is interviewed, and then we put them through our training program. Mm-hmm. And we have a variety of styles of service. We do certain styles of a serve sit-down dinner versus a buffet versus a cocktail party, a Russian service, whatever the style of family style. We have a set standard way of training our employees to engage in service at our events. And we're very rigorous about it. How you look and how you present yourself, and shoulders back, head high. I mean, we do a lot of that kind of training.
That wouldn't even occur to me, but now that you say it, I get it when I think back to certain situations.
Critical. Yeah, how you hold your hands when you're just walking, how you hold yourself in a dining room when you're not serving, how you mix a drink, how all of that we train.
I was at a restaurant recently where it was interesting. I noticed that when I would go walk down the hallway, they would get out of the way in a certain way that I'd never seen before. And I took notice of it.
Yeah, it's training.
Yeah.
It's training. And we've just really, it's the tip of the iceberg for us. We're getting so much better at it. And I think that individuals who work for us, even though they're not salaried full-time employees, I think they really do value and appreciate the time and attention we give to it and to them. And what our expectations are, their standards of excellence. And we not only demand it, we cultivate it. And then we encourage them to work together when they're at an event with some of the newer people, mentor some of the senior people and the mentors, professionals.
That's a great idea. I love that.
Yeah, it's really important to us because, in fact, the food comes from the back of the house. How you're received when a guest walks into a dining room or into whatever environment it is, the first people literally see it is the very first touch. And they're our staff, and they are extensions of our organization,
Well, and I'm also thinking about, especially the level at which you work, the kind of clients you're dealing with, they have seen some of the greatest parties on the planet.
That's right.
They're aware.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. And their standards are high. So ours have to be equally as high, if not better.
And again, give them something different.
Totally, and give them something different. Always. That's right. A different experience.
How about challenges? I mean, obviously, the kind of work that you're doing certainly must come with just incredible challenges. This is so complicated. Do you have any good stories about how you've dealt with a really tough challenge in the moment?
Well, a tough challenge is something minor. We had it last night. So Salesforce is opening their new property, and yesterday was the first day. So we did, and the kitchen's not ready. So we brought a kitchen in, and they didn't have a place for it. So we were in the mailroom, which is typical. And the health inspector came and said, "You can't be in the mailroom." And we're like, "Okay, that's what's available." The kitchen just opened. He said, "I've just opened the kitchen for you. Take this all downstairs." So then we go downstairs. The thing about it is, normally a new building opening always has its challenges. There's no question about that. So you plan the best you can possibly plan, and change and stuff happens, because stuff always happens. The changes happen. I feel as if because we go to such an extreme to understand the venue and the challenges of the venue.
So that, you're prepared ahead of time, sure.
If there's a tweak, like last night was a tweak, easy. But anything major can be catastrophic. So we have, one of the very first things I ever did was a Deb party in the Dan London suite at the St. Francis Hotel. I was brand new, and I knew what food I wanted to do, but I didn't think then, you better have a site inspection. First of all, you can't have one unless you're doing it on the QT, because only the St. Francis can do food in the St. Francis. I couldn't do food there. So I wasn't able to go and do a FAM trip ahead of time to figure out the kitchen in this suite. So I came with my food, and I got into the suite literally with my crew. It's 2 hours before.
Oh my God.
There was no kitchen. Zero. No kitchen. And it's the party space. I mean, there are 150 people coming into this, and I'm doing hors d'oeuvres, right?
Yeah, what did you do?
We said, well, are there any rooms? Can we use this bedroom? Can we use this bedroom? We had nothing. How we got in was under the guise of the florist, and we put all of the food under the flowers, packed carefully under the flowers, and rolled all the flowers in with the florist, and then unpacked it when we got up to the suite.
That's great.
And the host of the party was ahead of us, just handing out 20s to every person that we had to get past to hopefully get this food in. I mean, it was silly. We were in the bathroom. So we took every towel that we could possibly get our hands on. We covered every surface in the bathroom. And I was stepping in and out of the bathtub to get that tray of, oh my God, it was unbelievable. It was perfect. But and you have one experience like this, and you think, okay, lessons learned. Lessons learned. You're continually learning lessons and improving the quality of what you're delivering every single time you do an event. It's a work in progress, everything. You're never done.
God. What about emotionally? I mean, do you tend to...
Oh, I like it.
You like it? Wait a minute. What?
I do. I
you like those challenges?
I'd be crazy.
That's right. Why not embrace it, right? You got to embrace it.
Yeah, I like the challenges, and our nature is just, we're calm. I think the industry's filled with freneticism. We just don't function that way. It's just not in our DNA at all. So, we roll with it. It's just, we keep saying, it's just catering. It's not a crisis. It's just catering. Come on. So it's just a matter of being prepared beyond prepared, which is the amount of time we spend producing something is extraordinarily time consuming, so that we get to the site and we know everything there is to know. No surprises.
And coming back again to the business aspect of it, being prepared, the kind of team that you have, you mentioned a little while ago, you have 75 full-time people. I know, reading about this, you've got a team of chefs, bartenders, service staff, designers, account executives, event managers, executive leaders.
Warehouse people.
Oh
my God, warehouse forever.
I still don't understand, Paul. I mean, I know I'm going back again, but earlier you were saying it was organic for you. You didn't know how to do business, but you have built a very serious business that has scaled and has been successful for a very long time at a super high level. I just still wonder how you have developed that, or is it hiring the right people next to you to be able to manage that and set that up?
It's been a very interesting process as I look back on it. You do what you do in the moment and make decisions that you make. But I think the growth factor is when we were in the early days, when the company was growing, I do remember thinking, we really do have the food down. We really do have a good service staff. And we can sell. When any of those things were out of sync, I would slow it down and say, stop. Until we get service staff up to the level of everything else, we aren't going to take any more parties. Not no more parties, but we're not going to keep adding them like the phone was ringing and we were just crazy busy with answering phones. And
then you don't have a chance to develop these.
Correct. So that is what it was in the beginning. As the business, the challenge of growing and of an entrepreneur growing something from absolutely nothing, zero, to the level at which we're functioning today, hiring really good people who see your vision, have your values, is really critically important, and many missteps, hiring the wrong people, think they're the right people, not necessarily doing your due diligence up front to find out who they really are. And along 9 years of this, sure, there have been some missteps, but it's the team you build that is so really important. And for me to continue to grow it as the owner and as the founder, owner, and the leader, no matter what the title is, one thing I learned really early on is to get rid of the things that I'm not good at and find people to do those things. Instead of trying to be all things to all people, there's a break point that's critically early in that being everything. And the bottleneck, everything has to go through you or nothing can happen, which was the case has been the case certainly in the past, not today, but it's building it and building a team of people who can be your team, and as a team you work together collaboratively. No one person is more important than anyone else, and that is what we've done throughout the years to build this slowly.
But at the same time, as the owner, founder, ultimately this is all on your shoulders.
You bet. Buck stops right here.
Yeah, and you talk about, I know we all have missteps. It's still like hearing, like for myself, I had a situation where I had trusted, like you said earlier, maybe you think you found the right people. And I've been in situations where I thought, and then I found myself stepping out a little too much because so much going in. How do you keep your fingers in it and yet let go at the same time?
It's the hardest thing to do. So I think the way that we've always done everything here is you have people who parallel you enough, they begin to be you. They think like you. They act like you. And I don't mean this like me, but they understand the level at which you operate and what the standards of the organization are, and how to navigate the territory by being on your hip. And that's how we do everything. People are on people's hips and they learn it. And before, like what an employee who worked for me and said, they always want to talk to you. They never want to talk to me. And I said, I don't want them to talk to me. I'd much prefer they talk to you.
Right.
So I would bring this person along with me and say, you just come with me. You come with me. Before long, they'll call you because I'm not always available.
Because then they view them differently.
Exactly. And I'm not always available, and you're always going to be available. So you take that call for me if I'm not here, and before you know it, you build the relationship, and I'm not so important anymore.
Are you ever concerned about that, though? Like, you're built the face of the company. It's you, but then you're also bringing other people to be a part of the face of the company.
There's never a letting go. The mentoring, the team, I will say, will coach the team. And if somebody's out of sync, I had a really terrible experience. I hired a CEO. We're talking now, recent past, who was terrible for the organization. And it was a bad hire. It just wasn't a good fit. And my people all told me within short order, it's like, no, this is not a company culture guy. This isn't our guy. And so we let him go, and we did what we did. And now we have somebody who's been here 12 years, who's just completely extraordinary and a total fit, and has developed a really extraordinary culture as we've grown the business. But nobody's on their own.
And I love how you talk about the team, training the team. You talked about it also at events with the service staff and in all directions, because I find that when I do that, they are also learning more themselves, the people who are teaching the others.
Of course, yeah.
And I find that's been really valuable.
Yeah, and it's a great feeling. I said, and I just want to clarify what I just said. Nobody functions on their own. My goodness, I have a team of directors here. They all function on their own. They've all come up through through our business, and they know everything they need to know about what we do and how we do it, and I trust them implicitly. And I trust their decision making. And we work together, on strategies and how to improve, always improvements. It's just that we work tightly together and we all know how the other one thinks and breathes and acts because it's similar.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, different areas of the company, but I trust them implicitly to function independently.
As we kind of head toward wrapping up, I'm also curious, given, all your time in the business, all that you've learned, all that you've been through, all that you've developed, but in terms of things in society like organic, now that's so critical and important. And how are you?
So we're a certified green company across the board. Everything we do on property and off property, that's the first thing. We have an organic garden that's ours, an acre at Beaulieu Garden, which is one of our exclusive venues. So we buy as much organic as possible. Everything is cooked a la minute, which is finished on property. Nothing's cooked here, brought in a warming oven to the property and served there. Everything is cooked on site. And it's all organic and it's all done on our premise.
I love how society has gone that way.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's the
I've been around
best.
long enough to see the whole change.
Yeah,
Love it.
It's really, really best. We can improve our carbon footprint, and we are continually improving it. We work very, very hard at that for sure. So that's the swing, definitely, it's also interesting, the trend. People are eating more simply today. If you want to do a fabulous French laundry or a single thread or any one of these wonderful restaurants that are local here, that are multi-courses and it's a really extraordinary dining experience, then you do that. But what I'm finding is everybody really wants friendly, casual, simply prepared because the ingredients have gotten so good that you just don't have to do a ton with them anymore.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Which is wonderful. People are just much more casual about what their needs are today. So it's fun to play with them.
I know in the very beginning you talked about how you don't look in the future too much.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts about like the next 5 years, 10 years for your business?
I'm older than God right now. I do say that frequently to my folks, which is like, I don't know, you guys are moving fast and you want to keep growing. And I'm like, I'm exhausted. That's really not true. One of the aspects of our business that's really growing right now is our venue management. So it started with, we have the Ferry Building that we manage in San Francisco. So what that means is the phone rings to our line here in the office, and we plan and are responsible for all events in the event space at the Ferry Building. We also are that for the family who owns Beaulieu Garden. We do the same thing there. Phone rings here. We're totally responsible for selling and producing all of the events there, and we don't manage the property, but we make sure the property is managed properly when we do events. And we're just continually picking up new venues. And we have one right now that we're working toward that's going to be quite extraordinary. So there's this, I'm calling them right now because we haven't named, it seems like we have enough of them now that's a component of our business that's really growing. And that to me is very exciting. Property owners want turnkey. They want to make money. They would like to make money without effort, as little effort as possible. They want someone who they trust to manage the property for them. And we're very, very, very good at this. And people are now calling. We get this continuous stream of phone calls about private estates or, people see an opportunity there. We're not here but half the year. Wouldn't it be great if half the year we could do weddings on our property? So it's a value add, certainly, from a company perspective. And we have the venues to sell, obviously. Our events in.
And just talking to you, I can tell you have so much passion and enthusiasm. It sounds like this.
Next 5 years? Is that what you're after?
Well, no. I'm just saying the passion and enthusiasm you have. I just love it after 38 years in the business?
It is since 1980.
It's not easy.
Well, when you think about it, here's my thought. If it's not easy, and I don't mean it's ever been particularly easy, it takes effort, especially when you have this many people and you have this many people working for this many people. I mean, we have 520 W-2s that we send out. So this 5 days, we'll have 500 people working for us over the next 5 days because it's an enormous week and multiple parties. And so, I mean, as it grows, the people who are growing it with us, that we're growing together, are all passionate and love what they do. And if you don't love it, you should not do it. And if it's not fun anymore, find something that's fun. My dad said to me when I was very young, find something to do, Paula, that doesn't feel like work, and you will have found it. Yeah. And that is exactly what I've been able to do. It doesn't feel like work. There are days that are definitely feel like work, but in general, people are very, very happy here. And the culture is really rich. And we work very hard I used to always think clients first. Clients are the most important. The client experience is. It's our total experience that is important to me now. If you don't take care of the people who work for us and with us first, then they can't take care of our clients the best possible way. So if they're not fulfilled and they're not happy, how could they ever plan an event for a client if they're not happy doing what they do? So it's important, and we work very, very hard on not only a collaborative culture, but a culture that's where our values are, and we work.
Yeah, you apply them to yourselves, yeah.
We do. We have a program called Inspired Excellence. We carry a card around with us in our pocket, everyone who works here. And it has how we work on it. It has our mission, vision, values. It has how we work. There are company values, and we live them. We live and breathe them. And if somebody's out of sync about something, it's easy for someone to say, I don't think you're not meeting this standard. And so everybody's checking each other, and raising the bar.
Well, Paula, what is the best way to learn more about you and reach you? PaulaLeDuc.com?
www.paulaleduc.com.
And that's LEDUC. And we'll put this all in the show notes too, how to reach you all too, of course. Well, this has been a pleasure. You know who referred me to? I'm going to have to thank them both.
Tell me.
Sylvia Weinstock and Mindy Rice.
Oh, I love. We're loving working with Mindy. I haven't seen Sylvia. I feel like she's my friend from wherever she is at the moment. I love her, so we've enjoyed working with her over the years. And Mindy, that's very sweet.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Nice to finally meet you, Andy, and congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Doing a wonderful, wonderful service for us.
I appreciate that. Thank you for listening to my interview of Paula LeDuc. Check out the show notes at our website at theweddingbiz.com. Be sure to follow us if you're not already at Wedding Biz Show on Instagram. Again, Wedding Biz Show. And if you enjoyed this episode, which I'm sure you did, please share it with friends and colleagues. Help us to expand the community. And giving us a great review really also helps new people find us. So don't forget to listen to The Next Level. After this, I want to mention next week's guest, Robert Fountain, a very unique planner and designer, also out of San Francisco. Whoa, it was such a different kind of interview. Be sure to check in next week. And finally, if you haven't yet, subscribe to The Wedding Biz, wherever you get your podcast from, and we'll catch you next week.